Proudly brought to you by Wealthvest Investment Management, an authorized financial services provider. FSP number 54102.
Ndinga mtakandinga.
Today we sit with Ayanda. She's a chartered accountant and a TEDx speaker and a leader with Boardroom rigor. She wears many hats, but at the heart of it, she's an impact leader. Welcome to the Charters Table. Thank you for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Yonelisa. Thanks for having me.
Maybe tell us who you are and something interesting about yourself before we start. Yeah.
Sure. So I was born and bred in the Eastern Cape. I grew up in a one-horse town called Queenstown. And I was so good in maths that I wanted to be a maths teacher. And so I wanted to teach maths, but I also wanted to solve the world's problems, like hunger and things like that. And my mom said, but you can't do that on a teacher's salary.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up being a chartered accountant. And an interesting fact about me is that, I have a keen obsession with birds. And I think it's because of this perceived freedom that I see about them.
Yes.
When they're up in the air and they're able to glide and they're able to fly free. I think that sometimes I feel like I'm so bogged down by what's down here that I'd love to just take things from a bird's eye view.
So that's actually quite interesting. Yes. And also that perspective of the bird's eye view, because you really do get to have that. Yes, so there's a lot that you've also just said in that few minutes of your introduction, which we are going to unpack shortly. So you currently sit on a board and you get to have the bird's eye view in the work that you do. So how's that experience been like?
It's been very interesting. I think I got my first board role when I was 29. And I currently sit on a number of boards, and it's sort of become a bit of a career.
Yes.
It's very interesting and it's different. So from being involved in the detail from an audit and a finance perspective previously, whereas now I am looking strategically, I'm looking holistically, and I'm considering all the principles of governance and of forward thinking, and not just looking at what happened in the past, which is where I used to be in audit and in finance.
Yes.
It's different in that you have to remind yourself about the bigger picture all the time. You're not in the detail, you're not operational. And when you find yourself thinking about or commenting on things that are operational, you have to remind yourself to take a step back. And you have to keep top of mind that you're focusing on sustainability, which means how does the business go forward for the next 3, 5, 10, 100 years? How does it outlive us all? How do we make sure that this business can leave a legacy beyond the people that sit around the table? And so a key part of that is good governance. So it's very different. And in practice as well, it's very, very different.
Do you need to go for training? Is there some course that you need to do in order to be able to qualify to be a board member?
There are many courses that one can do. I think what's important to recognize is that it's lifelong learning and that you can never know absolutely everything. There's learning in each board role, in each industry that you may be involved in each company. Everything is nuanced and different. What's important is that you have sort of the main governance principles covered. And there are different governance frameworks for that matter. And again, it's just about edifying yourself and making sure that you know how you learn best and what you need to know for whatever industry you're in. I will say that it does require a bit of luck and someone to let you into the door, particularly when you're young.
Yes.
Because the people that sit around the board table are generally much older than me. And I'm often the youngest person in the room. And it required someone saying, let's give this young lady an opportunity and let's hear her out. And then it snowballed from there.
Okay. That I would think so too, because I'm just trying to figure out, because there's a conversation I've once had with the executive committee that I'm with, where we were discussing the very fact that if someone who's never had a board position before as a young person, how then do they pivot or get an access into such opportunities, which is where we need to start having those conversations so that we can, create the mentorship programs and opportunities for the future.
Yeah. Look, I think it goes beyond the mentorship, and it's almost like a sponsorship. When someone is mentioning your name in those rooms that you physically are not present in, and saying, let's look at this young person. She's got a good opinion on this. She's got a good handle on this. And whether it's something technical or, technical accounting, or it's governance, or things that are topical like ESG, social and ethics, even remuneration. Those things are topical. So find a niche, find something that you're really good at, because you'll never find that all the board members know everything. They pick them according to what people specialize in.
Yes.
So find a niche, specialize, be an expert in whatever you've chosen, and then get a sponsor, someone that's going to bring you along and open those doors. I often say that volunteering is also a great way of getting experience. So my first volunteer board was an NGO that required a completely new setup of a board structure, board processes, board charters, etc. And that's where I gained a lot of experience on how to set up a board, what's important, and how to set up terms of reference and board code of conduct and all of that. So volunteer, get the experience, and don't look down on those unpaid board roles.
Yes, that makes sense. Maybe let's go back to how you became a chartered accountant and when you wanting to solve world hunger. So maybe how did you end up selecting chartered accountancy? I mean, you could have been a social worker also, or you could have chosen another path, but what was the decision point that came into that when you made that decision?
So I would say the biggest decision point was realizing that you can, as an individual, make a big difference in your community, right? But what really makes impact is scale and access to finance and access to large opportunities. And oftentimes, your average person, your average South African professional does not have access to those opportunities. And what the CASA designation allowed me to do is to have access to decision makers, to be a decision maker, and opportunities to access finance and funding for our people, for communities, to make a difference. So that was sort of the pivotal moment where I realized, okay, this is how I can access those rooms. Then I remember in grade 11, we had a career fair, and the chartered accountants came to speak to us from Charteris and Barnes, and they just looked like money. They smelled like money. They were just, and I just thought, but that's what I want. That's what I want to look like. That's what I want to smell like. and then I just never looked back. And, in hindsight, my mother was right. The designation has allowed me opportunities that I don't think your average South African gets. It's allowed me to sit at tables of influence where decisions are made about people's careers, about people's futures, about communities, and how communities are serviced. And I don't take that lightly.
Okay. And then how did you decide on the varsity then you went to?
Oh, it was simple. They gave me a bursary. I went to Stellenbosch and they were giving out bursaries if you'd received certain marks, and they gave me a full bursary for my undergrad and my honors. And then in honors, I signed an articles contract, and then they topped up my bursary as well.
Okay. Yeah. It was very easy for you.
Yes.
You didn't even think of Joburg.
No. I'd applied everywhere, and they were the only ones that came in with a full bursary.
I see. Okay. That's a very easy decision point. And then how was your experience of moving from home to the Western Cape?
It was different. I think I was lucky that Stellenbosch was still a very small town. But it was different because there were very few people that looked like me, that sounded like me, that spoke my language. But it required me to really get out of my comfort zone. Firstly, because I was there at a time where they were still doing the classes in Afrikaans. Yes. So all the classes were still in Afrikaans, and that was quite an adjustment because I didn't have it as, a first language or a home language. And then realized that I'm going to have to sort of grow my community beyond what I think a traditional community looks like. So coming from the Eastern Cape, it's full of people that look and sound like me, but then getting to Stellenbosch and realizing, okay, now I need to realize that there are other people, and those people are ultimately part of my community.
Yeah.
But it was such an edifying experience. It was a big growth in my life, and I would probably choose it again if I had a choice. I would go there again.
It's interesting you say that. I think we're all biased about our matter, because I would also choose my undergrad university over and over again, but just because of the experience that I had there, because it makes the person that you are, and it creates opportunities that I don't think you would get if you had gone elsewhere, or they would probably look different.
They would, but it also depends on you.
Yes.
And how you're open to a new environment and those opportunities.
Yes. And then how was your experience when you then had to transition to doing your articles? How was that?
I loved articles. I flourished. And I think it's because I was surrounded by my peers in the true sense. You're all doing articles. You're all doing long hours, working long hours, and you're studying for your board exam. So I loved articles. It was a lot more diverse also compared to varsity, because people are coming from different varsities, different communities and provinces. So I absolutely loved the diversity. The work was it was audit, It wasn't rocket science, it was audit. And I loved it because I specialized in financial services and particularly within valuations of unlisted debt instruments. And that opportunity to specialize as well was just great for me in my career. It was tough in that you're not earning much. You're working long hours and you're living in Cape Town where things are just so expensive. So it was tough in that sense, but you're all in the trenches together, which I appreciate the value of community as well. It can get lonely sometimes, when you look at, for example, your peers that aren't in the same space, or, people that you went to high school with that are on different career paths. And people don't necessarily realize that, you're working long hours, you're working 12-hour days and overtime and studying. So it can get a bit lonely. And I think that's why then when you're in articles, you gravitate towards the people that are doing the same thing as you and you become friends with them.
Yes.
I got most of my mentors and sponsors within articles from managers and partners that saw some potential in me that I'm still in touch with and I'm still very close with. So those were my formative years for my career. And
What was your favorite memory of the CA journey?
I think it's definitely passing board 2. I am still celebrating it almost 10 years later. And because it was such a pivotal moment, because it signals that you're done. It signals that all your hard work has not been fruitless, and that there's so much ahead of you. So that moment, I remember I got my results. I called my parents. There were lots of tears and lots of laughter, and I'm still celebrating.
That's a nice memory. It's the passing that's important. But did you really believe it that this has now happened when you got your results?
No, I didn't. I didn't believe it at all. And I think particularly at the time, and I guess over the years, you see that the pass rates, particularly for Black people in the CIPM board exams, are generally lower. For first-time passes, I didn't think it would happen, especially not the first time. Yeah, so it took a while for it to really sink in.
But what made it sink?
The bonus. So what made it sink, obviously we got, you get bonuses when you pass. But I think when we got to the office the next week, and then you start getting more work in the office because you're now virtually a CA, then you realize, okay, no, there's a lot more responsibility here. You're now making decisions. So yeah, I think that's the thing that made me realize, no, this is it.
No, also the bonuses would also encourage me.
Yes.
So maybe just taking on the money aspect, what do you do with your first paycheck when you started working?
I bought clothes. And that was a function of, my clients. So we went out to see clients, and these clients would, be financial services, blue chip type of clients.
Yeah.
And they would look so smart. And I thought to myself, okay, I also need to look really smart. I need to look like I belong, because I certainly don't feel it. I took my first paycheck and I went and I bought some nice shoes and some clothes and made myself feel good, a bit of retail therapy. But that paycheck didn't stretch very far. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I can understand that, right? It's you're effectively investing in yourself, but in a sense of retail therapy.
Yes.
Because it is important to walk into into those rooms and feel like you and look like you belong there.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can, as a student, you don't have much formal clothes, so I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So maybe staying with your charter now, but what did you learn when in earning your charter?
I think one of the biggest lessons that is only coming back to me, I would say in the last year or two, is around how it opens up opportunities, but it really is up to you how you deal with those opportunities and what you do with them. And I'll make a trivial example. So you become a chartered accountant and suddenly you've got a lot of access to credit. And the assumption is that because you studied finance, you know how to handle money, you know how to budget, you know how to handle credit. And actually that's not the case. What's important is not just the theory of knowing how to budget, but it's about your relationship with money. Because if you don't have a good relationship with money, then you will not know how to make money work for you.
Yes.
And so this journey of getting to CA, having access to money and credit and finance and all of that, and to where I am now, has been sort of unlearning unhealthy money habits and relearning healthier ones. And I think it's also a function of our parents were raised on survival, and they raised us on survival because they were just trying to make it to the next month and to month end and make sure that there were clothes on our backs and food on the table.
Yes.
But I think that I had a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with this newfound access to finances, that I had to figure out, what does it look like? And there was a lot of shame in, but I'm a CA and I'm not handling money that well. But I realized it really is about those formative years and how you see your parents handle money.
I think we also don't talk about money in our families the same way we should be talking about money. So then money becomes a shameful thing to talk about, because the only thing I could hear when I was growing up was "Anamali, I don't have money." And so I grew up with that relationship to say that, no, I don't have money. So there was always a lack of it. And I never thought of it in abundance. So now when you get the credit, because then it starts creating that the feeling of abundance, and that's when you get trapped in the debt spiral. So I think the conversations in our families around the dinner tables need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even in friendship circles. So sure, we didn't have those conversations around the dinner table growing up, but when we're sitting as friends and we're trying to floss on each other, or trying to go to very expensive restaurants for someone's baby shower or birthday or that kind of thing, not realizing that, maybe there's a friend that's struggling to make it to month end.
Yes.
Not realizing that there's a friend that's trapped in the terrible cycle of debt, or they're, drowning in black tax. When we're not having those honest conversations with each other as friends, then we're not really holding each other accountable and supporting each other in the best way that we can.
Yes, I think the friend circles are actually quite important, because that's where it can get it can get lost very quickly and go out of spiral very quickly. It is important to have those honest conversations. So if I reflect with my friends, we'll like test the temperature. So what are we feeling like today? And then someone will always say, no, it's that time of the month for me, or it's something's coming up, and then we'll choose something a bit more within the budget. And so we're always mindful of that. But it's taken a while for us to get to conversations like that, because again, it's that shame of having to talk about money like that. Because now you're like, you're a CFA or chartered accountant. How can you be struggling with money like that? But the world doesn't work like that. There's so much responsibility that we need to take care of that you don't always have everything in access.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything is so nuanced. People have so many problems, and we just need to be mindful of that.
Yes, yeah. So this actually reminds me of a Substack that you wrote. So you write there quite a lot. But for me, the piece that stood out was the one with the title, "You aren't bad with money, you're just first generation." Firstly, what a title. that just grabbed my attention. And I liked it when you said you are making financial decisions that were impossible for your foremothers and fathers. And what was going through your mind when you wrote this one?
Yeah. So I remember sitting, beginning of the year, I'll do an annual budget for my family. And that includes, the sort of smallest detail, like my monthly Netflix subscription, to large bond payments, whatever, savings, retirement, all of that. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm struggling to make this budget work for 2026. And how much it's grown and how expensive things are, and especially with 2 young kids. And I remember being frustrated with myself. But no, man, Ayanda, why are you not making this work? Something's got to give, right? And you're not saving enough for retirement. And, you've got elderly parents and that and that. And I remember sitting in my garden and saying, okay, but extend a little bit of grace to yourself. Because firstly, the life that you're living is beyond your forefathers' wildest dreams, wildest expectations. You've already done so well. And where you are right now is already successful. Someone else looking from the outside can say, I want to be where Ayanda is, even though you're feeling discontent or frustrated with yourself. So I just thought, let me extend a bit of grace to myself. And then I realized the fact that I'm even able to make a budget. And in that budget, there are bond payments and car payments and school fees and support for my elderly parents and other black tax and whatever else. And there's still money that I'm putting aside for savings or retirement is a blessing in itself.
Yes.
It's a privilege that you cannot take lightly. And my frustration should not be that I'm bad with money. I'm handling and juggling so much, because when you're first generation with this kind of success, first generation, whatever charter holder or in whatever corporate, or earning this amount of money, first time, a home buyer, car buyer, whatever the case may be, you are carrying not just your own expectations, but the expectations of so many people that have come before you.
Yeah.
But also you need to make sure that these expectations outlive you. They live further than you. So the decisions that you're making are so heavy that you have to extend grace to yourself.
Sure. Yes. So I think for me, that piece really resonated with me. I don't think I've read anything like that in a while. Mm-hmm. So I really felt seen when I read that piece. But I think this is why it's important to write our own stories, to have people, that look like us, write these experiences for this very reason. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to maybe understand from you is, where did this writing thing come from?
So I started writing when I was 9. And I would write, what I'm feeling, how was my day, that kind of thing. It was always a way of expressing myself. Mm. And then I got a bit older, I stopped writing, and you go through life and there are challenges and ups and downs and all of that. And I remember just having a really tough day and just taking my pen and starting to write. And then it just, I just would write every single day. And then I do a lot of speaking engagements about some of the things that I write, until someone said, it would be great if there was somewhere where you could put these nuggets, somewhere that we could reference to and just be able to read and share with other people. And so that's how the writing started. And I thought Substack would be the best place. And I focus on finances, financial behavior, and unlearning and relearning when it comes to being able to handle money. I talk about our nervous systems and how that affects our financial decisions that we make. And I talk about just leaving the inherited financial burdens behind and creating your own financial legacy, regardless of how much you're earning. Because I find that with Black people particularly, that's something that we struggle with. We carry a lot of financial trauma because our people previously never had. Now we're in a position of having. But when we have, if we're not careful, we could quickly go back to not having if we don't treat what we have with respect.
Yes. Yeah. That is quite profound. As you were speaking, I just remembered that Andina Mali, I don't have money. So that's a form of financial trauma. And it's easy to actually continue carrying that forward. And in the spaces that you operate in, you continue to exude that because you're operating from that place. So I like that a lot.
It's also important, Yonelisa, to remember that it's also okay to have money now. It's also okay. There's no shame in having it. There's no shame in spending it and making yourself feel good.
Yes. Yeah. I think thank you for that permission. It's something that I also struggled with for a very long time. I think for me it was, I come from a rural area back in the Eastern Cape, and my mom doesn't work. So I used to wonder, is it okay for me to be living the life that I'm living, to be enjoying the things that I'm enjoying, like if I haven't, sent all my excess money home after I've paid my bills. But I think one of the things that my mom did was she also liberated me. She's like, you've already done so much for me that it's okay for you to also take care of you so that you can feel like this is what I'm working towards. And so ever since then, I've had that liberation to enjoy without the guilt.
Yes. I love that.
And then actually another thing that you said that I really liked, which I did try, but I fell through, it's the annual budget. Because companies will have a financial, annual financials and annual forecast budgets. But I don't think we ever do that for ourselves. I think that's a really brilliant idea because then you get to see like what the year looks like for you and whether your aspirations for the year are actually realistic.
Yes, absolutely. It's also about treating yourself with foresight and not as an afterthought.
Yes.
Don't wait for the paycheck and then see what's left. Try and be in control of your life and of your finances. So the same way that you would do for your company, and track it every single month and how far we in comparison to budget and update the forecast, then you have to extend the same to yourself.
Yeah. I've got some homework then.
Yes.
I need to pick up that spreadsheet I once started and continue with that. I think so. Staying with this speaking engagement conversation that we spoke about earlier, is there's something that you said in a TED talk of yours, and you said that one needs to be in a room that deserves your energy. How does one know this?
Your intuition. Your gut can tell you when you are not feeling great that I'm not meant to be here. These people, they don't appreciate me. These people don't deserve my energy and my time. And the longer you stay, the more you betray yourself. And whether that is in a toxic relationship or in a job that you find yourself so depressed or just miserable in, or in a friendship circle where you just don't enjoy spending time with those people, but you're staying because, I don't know, social status maybe.
Yeah.
You know it. Your body can tell you, and you need to listen to your body. Your intuition can tell you where you're not meant to be.
But then how do you guard against you leaving every time you get to a certain point? Like, it's like you get to a point where something happens and then that's the point where you depart again. Like if you haven't dealt with the underlying factors, is there something that you have to also do like as work to just ensure that you don't continuously leave the room?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's so important to know yourself. Firstly, know what drives you, what motivates you, what are you looking for in a relationship, whether it's a work relationship, personal relationship. So in the workspace, for example, are you driven by money? Are you driven by wanting to make an impact and leave a legacy? Are you driven by power? What is the thing that drives you? So it's so important to know what drives you. And then when you're in that room and you recognize that this room is not deserving of me and my energy and my time, why is that? Is it because of a person? Is it because of a system failure that has made you grossly unhappy? Is it because of the work that you're doing where you feel it's undermined or there's no impact? So figure that out. So don't just leave. Understand, is it you? Are you the drama? Or is it the space?
Yes.
Don't just get up and leave. But you need to be careful of what Adam Grant calls escalation of commitment to a failing cause, where you can see that you're just pouring more resources and time and energy into a dark hole, all because you don't want to be that person that leaves all the time. You need to know when to call it.
Sure. Wow. Adam Grant is quite insightful.
Yeah.
I would need to. Is that from a book?
Yes, it is from a book. Yeah,
I should
definitely
grab a
look it
copy
up.
of that. So staying on the leadership talk, right? What does it take to be a good leader?
Yo. So, in my opinion, I think authenticity and being clear about what are you doing here. Okay. I think there are so many different leadership traits, and if I think about myself and the different leadership hats that I wear, what's important for me is to be myself and never change the way that I am to fit a certain narrative. It's important to always remain true to myself. It's important to put the people first. So if the mission is we're saving the planet, or we are selling candy floss, or whatever the case may be, how are the people? And those people are the customers and your staff and whoever else is impacted by what you're doing.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's important to be fair. Someone said you don't always have to be nice, but you must always be fair.
Yes.
And that is to everybody, whether it relates to your staff policies, how you treat people, how you pay people, how you price your product, whatever the case may be, it's important to always be fair. And then as a leader, you have to be inspirational. So for me, that is beyond the numbers, and that's beyond, debits and credits, and that's beyond books and accounting and processes and systems. It's telling people, this is the journey that we're on. Come with me. You want your people to be able to go to war for you.
Yes.
I think a lot of us think leadership is a far-fetched thing. It's a thing that's, for CEOs and CFOs, and we forget that we're leaders in our daily lives, and we have to be consistent. Whether you are a leader to someone that helps you in your home, a domestic worker,
Yes.
You are their leader. And you have to treat them the same way you expect your boss to treat you, or the same way that you treat your staff in the corporate space. So if you're fighting for a bonus, what are you doing on the other side? And if you're fighting for 10% increase instead of 6%, what are you doing on the other side? So it's important to be consistent.
Sure. There's something that you said, and it was just replaying in my head as you were talking. It's when you said the people have to be able to go to war for you. That's actually an interesting way of looking at the impact that you have within the people and the people that you're actually leading. It reminds me of, so I also I volunteer in a committee for young professionals. And one of the things that I've actually realized is some of the guys I serve with, they do that. They will ask me, so what are we doing today? And they'll always be ready to receive the instructions from me. And yeah, it's a nice feeling, but there's a lot of responsibility with that. And how do you deal with something like that?
Yeah. I think when it comes to purpose, and or you feel like why you're here, why you're on that committee, why you're doing what you're doing, then it becomes almost inevitable that you're going to be able to shoulder the responsibility and the burden that comes with leading. When you're uncertain about why you're doing this, or you're doing it for, selfishly almost, then it becomes a little bit difficult, because over time you can only truly be yourself. So you can pretend in the beginning, but over time, Yonelisa will be Yonelisa, whatever that looks like.
Okay.
So you need to be certain about your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing. And then that becomes who you are. It's a lived experience. It's not a facade or a persona that you put on. That's part of your daily life. And when your people go to war for you, the inverse is also true, because you have to go to war for them.
Yes. Yeah. And then you also have to be fair in the equation. Yeah. And then speaking of purpose, do you feel like you are living your purpose? Are you solving that world hunger?
Am I solving world hunger? The short answer is not directly.
Yes.
Not directly. I am doing a lot that seeks to solve the world's problems. And maybe I'll give you one or two examples. So I've got a bursary fund that's in my name, and that's for commerce students that are previously disadvantaged. And I put them through university, and I place them in jobs, and then there's a mentorship and a sponsorship program. And that doesn't directly solve the world's hunger, but it changes the trajectory of a generation and of a lineage. Because when someone is educated and when someone is able to work, then it absolutely changes things for at least 7 people in this country. And that's such a big part of what I do. And it makes me so proud of how far my students have come, and some are already working, some are already doing their bit to give back, which is it's a very big part of, coming full circle. I also work with abandoned children and women that are marginalized, women that are running away from abusive partners. And what's important there is upward economic mobility, making sure that people are able to work. So equipping them with skills to go out and work and try and do better for themselves and for their kids. So am I solving world hunger? No. But I'm doing the best that I can in my small corner of the world.
And that best is actually quite impressive.
Thank you.
It's quite a lot. I did want to touch on the bursary, actually, as one of my prep points. But I wanted to understand, where did that come from? Like, what was the sort of process when you decided to come up with that?
So throughout varsity and to this point, I've always wanted my name to be associated with greatness. I've always wanted it to outlive me, in a sense. And I remember looking through, there used to be this booklet, scholarship booklet, and you'd see people's surnames, what trust bursary, what trust bursary. And these people are people that lived in the 1800s, so they're no longer around, but their names continued, and they were funding students. And I thought, I want that. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was realizing the importance of education. It's not the only way to success, but in this country, it is a big stepping stone to success. I think with the systemic issues that exist, it's an important part of trying to get our people just a little bit better on the economic upward mobility agenda.
Yes.
And so I invested in education. I invest in young people. I back young people to solve a lot of the problems that exist in this country. And that's why also I think in spaces where traditionally there would be older people, young people need to come to the table because they've got a different way of thinking and a different view of the world.
Yes.
So as much as they're affected by systemic issues, they aren't tainted by the things that led to the systemic issues. They've got a different outside of the box way of thinking of things. And so that's how the bursary came about. And a couple of organizations and friends and family said, I've got a bit of extra cash. I would love to put it towards education. And so that's how the fund then came together.
Okay. That is quite impressive and inspiring. And I think I also like the mentorship and the other parts to it, because I don't think it's enough to give people money. You also have to take them on that journey. When I was in varsity, actually my first year, I didn't have a sponsor, but I was on NAFSAS. So one of the things that I saw was a lot of the guys with sponsorship from bursaries and stuff. So some of them didn't do well because they didn't get that guidance. So you solved the money problem, but you hadn't solved the mentorship and the transition side of things. So the fact that there's a leg to that like speaks, it will make a big difference in the.
Yeah, when you think about how many unemployed graduates also exist in the country, you realize that it's not just education, but it's the access to opportunities. So then we provide them the access to further opportunities post-graduation to make sure they can work. They've got access to the right people in the right spaces for the success. The education on its own is not enough.
And the skills also.
Yes.
How you show up in that interview.
Yes.
Because one of the things I realized when I was trying to break into finance is somebody else will think, is this somebody I can work with?
Yes.
So if you've got the thing where you look all around the room and you've got all these things that could annoy the interviewer, they will be like, no, I definitely don't want to work with this person. So through conversations and through having the right mentors and people that just help you navigate this, like how to enter the workplace, that can actually help you and increase your chances of actually landing a job.
Absolutely. We had a young man who was studying at UOFS, doing BSc Actuarial Science. Everything more than 80%. Brilliant young man. His name was George. But he could not speak English. Graduated cum laude, no English. Just good at numbers. And he struggled to land a job because he couldn't get through an interview. So we had to pay for an extra year for him to just do English, just to do business English, how to speak, how to present himself. And now he's working and he's in investments and all of that, and it's great. But you realize that there are so many other things that contribute to success.
Yes, yes. And then maybe just moving on into your entrepreneurship journey. What was that transition like into entrepreneurship?
So I left corporate at the height of COVID and decided to start consulting and started an accounting advisory. And that was focused on SMMEs in the township economy because I felt they were underserviced and they needed CA skills to grow their businesses, to scale, to get them ready for funding, because the funders would generally have all these requirements that they didn't understand. So I felt there was a bit of a translation gap there. I also believe that the township economy is a booming economy that is completely underserviced and not tapped into enough and not supported enough. And so that's how that jump started for me. So from servicing big financial services clients, I went into the township economy, which has been great. And I absolutely love my time working with my entrepreneurs. And then one thing then led to another. Then it was another business acquisition and another business acquisition. And it's been great. It's been a big learning curve. And interestingly, I do sort of a lot of consulting for corporates that are trying to understand the township economy because they're trying to either service that market or understand it or see what products they can offer in that space. And that's largely how my entrepreneurship journey has gone. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, that's quite an interesting journey. That during COVID, when the world was going through like a very traumatic time, you were branching into entrepreneurship. I think that's quite brave of you. But also it's something that's needed in the country given how high unemployment is. So whenever we can get an extra business that hires a few more people, it does move the needle a bit.
It does. And I really think that a lot of the solutions to unemployment and youth unemployment do lie in entrepreneurship and in small businesses. Because when you add them up, then you see the impact on GDP and on growth rates within the country. So that is where it is.
So maybe just a reflection point I'm quite interested in. So if you could go back and talk to yourself at the start of the journey, what would you say?
Yeah. I would say that you don't need to fit a certain mold. I think when you go through the CA journey of articles, everything is so set out for you. Everything is, you're going to do articles and you need 3,600 hours and you need to write board 1 and then board 2. And these are the competencies that you need to get. And then when you complete the journey and you become a chartered accountant, suddenly you don't know what's next. Suddenly the world is your oyster.
Yes.
And you want to almost put yourself in a box. Okay, I'm going to be an FM, a financial manager, then I'm going to be a CFO and that's it. Or I'm going to work in asset management or whatever the case may be. But there are so many opportunities out there, and I think a lot of them are missed opportunities. What I would say to myself is, remember the important thing is that your skills are transferable. That it's not about a title. It's not about a specific job. Find what you're passionate about and then use your skills within that sphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's sage advice for a younger self. But you've done exactly that. So it's been quite interesting to see that. Maybe, who was your toughest critic?
Myself. I was my toughest critic. 100%. I've always felt I wasn't doing enough. I could do more. I could look better. I could have said that differently. And I think I judged myself harshly sometimes for some of the decisions that I'd make and in even some of the mistakes that I'd make. But I've learned to be a lot kinder to myself and appreciate my idiosyncrasies in a sense and appreciate who I am. And that every single decision that I've made was a necessary part to become who I am.
Okay. Yeah. And then do you think that your critic got anything wrong?
Yeah. Yes. I think initially my critic would have said, success looks a certain way. And I can say now that it doesn't. Success is not necessarily about the job title or the paycheck. But it's about impact for me. It's about the stories that I'm able to tell about the good work that we've done. That there was a lady who was selling chicken feet at the taxi rank and she was grossing maybe 40,000 Rand a month. And 10 years later, she's now at 1 million Rand a month.
Oh, geez,
it's
wow.
those kind of success stories that the critic got wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad the critic was wrong. So I see. So your view of success has then changed.
It has. It has.
Is it important that as we journey along through life that we actually update our operating system? Just like in terms of how you define things, how you define success.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't think you were the same person 5 years ago. Even 10 years ago, even 3 years ago. And it's okay to change. It's okay to change how you think and opinions that you have about yourself and about the world. It's okay to change belief systems. What's important is the conviction. And whether you're able to sleep at night. Do you have peace within yourself? But it is so important to keep updating that operating software. Otherwise, you get stuck. And the same way that we need to update our thinking about how I mentioned earlier about money, it's important to update your thinking about the world and about your beliefs and about what your measures of success look like. You'll find that maybe in your 20s, what was important was studying and getting through and paying rent. And then in your 30s, what's important is building a stable career, building your name within the industry, having a little bit of savings and saving for retirement. In your 60s, maybe what's important to you is being able to buy your time back and not working as much.
Yes.
So it's constant upgrading and updating.
Okay. And then what has the journey actually given you philosophically, maybe professionally, now beyond the letters of being a chartered accountant?
The journey, I think I worked a lot in my formative years. I worked long hours. I remember leaving the office at 2 a.m. but being back at the office by 6 a.m. And I think in that time, the thing that I learned the most is sometimes you have to work twice as hard to have half of what other people have.
Yeah.
And that's because maybe you didn't have the same opportunities growing up. Maybe you didn't study, at the same university. Maybe your English isn't as good. Maybe the conversations you're having around a braai are not the same as your counterparts. What I've learned is that if you want something, you work hard. You work very hard for it, and you are unrelentless about it. And once you achieve it, it's okay to stop and reflect and say, well done. And I think for the longest time, I was just onto the next thing, onto the next thing, onto the next thing, and not really stopping to appreciate the view at wherever I've reached. Yeah.
Sure.
So I've now learned that stop, reflect, take in the view, appreciate yourself and the people that have helped you along the way, and then continue.
Okay. And then did you ever work abroad?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't work abroad.
Is there a reason why?
Yeah, there is. There have been a couple of instances where I almost took a job abroad or that kind of thing. And I think the fundamental reason for me is this is home. And if I'm going to use my skills anyway, it's going to be here.
Okay. Because I know your designation takes you in every corner of this world, which is a good thing to know. But yeah, I was just quite interested about that. I wanted to understand, is there like a line or a book or a story that sort of like wraps up your journey?
So one of my favorite books is by Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. And I think that the reason why is because he speaks about duality and how two things can be true at the same time. When he says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I think my life has been made up of duality, where you can be in the middle of umgo, but also realize how amazing life is at the same time.
Yes.
You can be struggling financially, but you can also be a CA, that earns decently. You can be excellent at your job and hate your job at the same time. And so I always reflect on that duality and how it's so important to accept that things aren't one or the other. They can be both.
Yeah.
And you can live like that, and it's okay. You need to accept it for what it is and appreciate both sides. Take what you can from it and then move on accordingly.
Sure. So, okay, I know I said this was like we're closing, but I need to talk about this a bit more. So this reminds me of like a time when I passed my designation. It was one of the happiest times of my life, but also there was another side where I was grieving something. So, and having to have those two things coexist is actually quite tough, because now in one side you're celebrating, in the other side you're actually grieving, or you are sad about something. So it's the word for it, I didn't call it duality, but called it bittersweet. What's that yin and yang type of thing. So, but how do you like navigate those two dualities, I guess?
For me, I think it's been forging meaning, right? The meaning doesn't fall out of the sky. You create the meaning. So you can be in that space of I'm grieving, but I'm celebrating, and where do I find meaning in this, right? And in the grieving, there's letting go. In the grieving, there's understanding that there are things beyond your control. And that's the lesson that you choose to take from that and take it into the celebration. So it's you saying, this is where I'm at. This is how I'm going to forge the meaning. And this is the lesson I'm going to take. That's how I've done it.
Yeah. Because you can't let the one overshadow the other one. You still have to give both the space so that they can breathe and be whatever they need to be in your life, and then you move on from there. So Ayanda, with that, thank you. It's been such an interesting conversation. There's so much that I think we've taken from this conversation and about your boardroom rigor and the impact that you're actually doing in the world. I hope that you continue with the work that you're doing and being the trailblazer that you are. The world needs more of change makers like you.
Thank you so much, Yonelisa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So there's something I need to ask you to do for us.
Okay.
So you're going to close today's episode with how you would normally do it in your TED Talks. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This has been an episode of The Charters Table. And for all the young people out there, be unrelentless in pursuing your dreams. Find out your purpose, that which keeps you awake at night, and be unrelentless in pursuing it. Thank you.